zoning request. Roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Mr. Coleman. Mr. Turney.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Van Uzen.
Here.
Mr. Weber.
Here.
Turn the floor over to Brody.
All right, thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. This is the 6:15 public hearing for the rezoning request for 940 Westbrook Drive. This property is currently zoned park. The request this evening is to transfer that to RM zoning, which is multifamily residential. This property is located in the area of West Boundary Street and Finley Street. I've provided exhibits there in your packets for you. The applicant this evening is Paul Quapich. I have not met him, so I'm not sure if he's in attendance this evening, but I said that we would go ahead and present this on his behalf. Some background on this particular property. Currently, this property, 940, as well as 950, which will be our next public hearing, currently contain multifamily apartment units. Oh, yeah, sounds loud where I'm at, but,
Yeah, there you go. That's
all right. You need me to backtrack at
No,
all?
no,
or
I got you.
You're good, going forward? Okay. These properties of 940 and 950 are both going to be public hearings tonight, but they contain multifamily apartment units on them. They were built sometime in the 1970s, and I was able to track down through some of our records that sometime in 2007, the city did kind of a comprehensive rezoning of district areas that were kind of outlined in Sharpies. Consultants took that and made modifications to the zoning map that they produced. So it looks like, although these apartment complexes were there since the 1970s, that they were erroneously added as parkland, which made them non-conforming. Prior to that, they were listed as R4 zoning, which was the highest R category that we had at the time. So that leads me to believe that R4 was probably historically our multifamily zoning. So we probably took them from the appropriate zoning, zoned them parks, and now the request is to move them back. So I don't know if this property has actually transferred yet, but Mr. Quapich would be the purchaser of that property. I think they've closed on that. He was aware of the zoning issue prior to purchasing that and was navigating that. So his request is fairly straightforward. He's looking to have that property, what I'll say, rezoned back to multifamily to match the current use of that. I've reviewed the land use plan that's pending in front of City Council right now, expecting that will be approved in the near future. That particular land use update would suggest that these properties could be and should be rezoned for multifamily use. So the recommendation that came from my office was supportive of the rezoning of 940 Westbrook, as well as the next one, which is the property immediately to the south of 950. And when I presented that to the Planning Commission, they agreed unanimously 7-0 to rezone that to multifamily. And that concludes this report.
Any questions from council? Makes sense.
I do have one. So any of the updates, like if it says property owner want to do updates on the buildings and things like that, he would be limited due to the current zoning code?
Correct, yes. So that would restore his flexibility in making improvements or expansions to put him in the proper zoning category of RM to match the current use.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anybody else in the audience have a question or concern? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, it's passed. You said that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jim.
All right, I'd like to call order the 6:20 Public hearing on a rezoning request. Roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Ms. Matroni.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Here.
Mr. Weber.
Here.
I will turn the mic over to the city planning zone.
Thank you, Mayor. This is nearly an identical request. This is the parcel to the south of the one that we just discussed. This particular one is 950 Westbrook Drive. Same scenario. This was part of the 2007 rezoning, which took that from R4, which again was presumed to be our multifamily designation, rezoned it in 2007 to parkland. And this request is again to revert that back to multifamily zoning. In addition to what I stated during the first application, I believe this is the only property in the city. I've scoured the map, and although there's several thousand parcels, I was not aware of any other parkland that was not city-owned. So again, these properties contain multifamily apartment units, and this request is to bring it to its current use. It's zoning to match its current use. This also, being so similar to the first public hearing, was recommended by my office as well as the Planning Commission unanimously.
Any questions from council? Any questions from, or comment from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned for 4 more minutes. The next one at 6:25.
I know that I've read every single one.
Yeah, so. So it's just. Yeah, it's for rest. Yeah, right there's. Good times, right? Yeah. And I think that is too. So nobody would bill. They're just trying to-
Ten-minute variable on how long, depending on lines. Oh, that's right. The sanctuary.
Nothing can make coffee good.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like, you gotta decide that roasting what you're gonna cut down for a man. It's only 16 hours. You sometimes. I should have just done that today. Just like, subdivision, it takes me 4 or 5 minutes to get out of the subdivision. Me too, so.
It wasn't uncommon, you know, wine wasn't.
Traffic. Try to go in. Crazy.
Prices of building materials,
Traffic study.
are they bad?
This is not.
Okay.
Ready?
I will call to order the 6:25 public hearing, and this is also a rezoning request.
Do your roll call.
What?
You need to
Oh,
do-
yeah, roll, thanks, roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Here.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Ms. Matroni?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Van Nuzen?
Here.
Mr. Weber?
Here.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This is our third and final rezoning application for the evening. This is the same applicant, Mr. Paul Quapich. This is the third parcel he's looking to rezone. This one is similar but different from the first two that you heard this evening. This particular property also has a multi-unit building on it. I believe there's 4 units on this particular property of 941 Westbrook Drive. This is currently a legal non-conforming property. And I should have said legal non-conforming, not illegal non-conforming. So this is a non-conforming property currently for having a multi-unit structure on a single-family zoning lot. Current zoning is R3 single-family. The applicant has requested RM multifamily, and again, that would be to make the zoning match the current use. I had informed the applicant upon his application that I would not support this based on my findings of the land use plan and the current zoning map. The current land use plan, as I've included in your packets, indicates this as a legacy neighborhood, and it talks about the development patterns of the particular area should be preserved. Unlike on the west side of Westbrook Drive, which it allowed for multifamily uses. So I let him know that going into the hearing. The Planning Commission did review this application and unanimously recommended against the rezoning. They chose, or they're recommending to you all as city council members to retain the R3 single-family zoning for this particular project, which means that this property could be continued on into the future for its current use of multifamily, but would be considered to be a legal non-conforming use. The danger for the applicant in this particular situation is if the structure is damaged significantly by 60% or more, they could no longer use that for multifamily purposes and would have to construct a single-family residence on that property. Again, this is something that was made known to the purchaser before they made the transaction, so that should have, been considered through that process. There was some discussion at the Planning Commission meeting as to why it would be recommended to rezone the other parcels to RM and not this particular one. And if you look at it on the exhibit in its relationship to the R3 properties, the existing R3, this is actually across a road and bordered on every other side by R3 single-family uses, and they didn't want to encroach that multifamily into the R3 single-family neighborhood, whereas the first two hearings this evening were on the opposite side of the street and were serving as a buffer from both Finley Street and West Boundary. I think that concludes the report.
Any questions from council?
Yeah, Brody, how long has this, do you have any idea how long this building's existed in comparison to the neighboring residential?
I think all of these 3 structures were approximately 1970.
There's actually 2 more structures further to the north
Further to the north, yes.
that were built at the same time. I actually lived in this apartment back, 10, 15 years ago. So I'm very familiar with it. It's definitely unique. I would say that the way I view it too is there's really only one single-family property adjacent to this specific parcel, which is right to the east of it. You have Grassy Creek to the south. I actually run by it all the time too, going over the Westbrook Bridge there. You have, it's right at a corner too, so there's a street to the west and a street to the north as well, so. No.
So 965 across Lober is also multifamily, is that what you're saying?
Let me look at the map here. So it's right on Finley, and then there's another one on Lobert, then a little to the north as well. They're at that stop sign where Finley
So
and
955.
it would be, they're actually 938, and then again across the street.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I see, okay, so 965, so all that yellow, other than this one that's outlined, is single family, right, Brody?
Yes, on this particular map that you have in your packets here, all of the yellow is the R3 single family.
Okay.
And as you move up That address is 938.
Yeah, that's the one
zoning says to
Jonathan's
change.
talking about, that is
Correct,
already, I
yes.
guess.
And that has actually direct frontage on Finley Street, so
Okay.
the same argument for that one could be made for the park properties.
Okay, and just for everyone, from the auditor's side, it appears that building was built in 1971. The one directly to the east, which is my main concern, was built in 1966, at least according to the auditor's site. So it'd be 1021 Lober Drive. Did they get notice of the rezoning?
They did, yes.
Did they appear?
I don't believe they've contacted us, and they have not appeared yet.
Okay, so they weren't actively arguing against this reclassification?
No. Unless they saw the recommendation and felt like the fight was already being fought by the city through the recommendation process. I don't know. We've heard that before. Some people said, well, I didn't show up because I agreed with the recommendation. So they thought that that's perhaps held more weight than,
So do we send what the recommendation is from the city? Notice?
if they contact us, so if somebody calls and says, can I have the report? Because they want to read through the background, it'll have that information in it. But the actual notice that we send out, that notice will typically go out before the staff reports are written.
Okay,
So
so,
the notices will not have that information on it, but they may have called and said, what's going on with this property, because the postcards are fairly vague. It'll just say a rezoning request, and they'll say, what's going on? And sometimes we'll just email out the reports, and we may or may not hear back from them based on the contents of that report.
did Ms., I assume it's Ms. Horner still living there. Did she contact the office?
I was not made aware of any calls,
Okay.
but sometimes if people call, we will just simply email them the report, and
Is there a quick way to find out if she got that report? Because I want to cancel out the instance you're talking about. Find out if she was basing it on
yeah.
assumption that.
I can have that information for you for tomorrow's meeting for the Planning and Zoning Committee.
Okay.
Does the structure that's there, does that match the current zoning code? I mean, would that be characterized in the current code?
So the current use of that property is a 4-unit apartment building, and that would be inconsistent with the current zoning. The request that the applicant is making to rezone that to RM would bring that into conformance.
Single family.
Would it still meet all the setbacks and?
It is unlikely that it would meet all the current setbacks just because of the size of the property.
Okay.
But we have not explored that for sure.
And sorry, just to clarify, I want to make sure I heard that question correct. That was for setbacks as a multifamily property?
Correct.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that.
It looks pretty close.
And the front yard setbacks for multifamily are typically 50 feet, so.
It depends where the front, like if it's off Westbrook, it looks
In there.
like it's pretty far off. It's,
But it actually would have 2 front yard setbacks,
Yeah,
one from
good
each street, so I feel very confident it would not meet the current standards for
I
RM.
would say that the rear yard,
I think the rear yard is the biggest danger. honestly.
it was very tight.
Any other questions from council? Any questions or comments from the audience? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Granted.